What is up, and welcome back to 24 Minutes of A24, the podcast that takes a look at the A24 library 24 minutes at a time. I am Ethan Simi.
And I'm Ben Lawhorn. This week on the pod, we are inviting you all to walk through the red door of our secluded cabin and join us as we talk about 2017's It Comes at Night.
Secure within a desolate home as an unnatural threat terrorizes the world, a man has established a tenuous domestic order with his wife and son. Then a desperate young family arrives seeking refuge. As is the case with all of our podcasts, spoilers are ahead for 2017's It Comes at Night. If you don't want to be spoiled, pause the pod, go check out the movie, come back to this episode. This is a build as a horror mystery, I believe, which is interesting. We're going to get into that. We're going to talk about if it's actually a horror movie. We did want to end spooky season, with a horror movie, and I feel like this is a lesser talked about, lesser known one. I did not. I mean, I feel like I knew about this movie, but I did not know what this movie was about or anything. Was this your first time with this movie, Ben?
Yeah, it was. Like, I think you said you went in completely blind, right? Like, you just put it on.
I was blind, baby. Blind as a bat.
I watched the trailer and that was it. And I will say this feels like one of the most misleading trailers of all time, because I was just like, not necessarily in a bad way, but I thought I was getting something else when I put this on. You know, I was ready for more jump scares. I was ready for like an actual monster of some sort or an attack or something. And then that just doesn't happen. Like, it's all like internal, you know what I mean? Like, everything happens inside the cabin, which is great. Like, I like that kind of stuff. I just was like bracing myself for the first hour of like, all right, what is this thing going to be that's like attacking them? What's causing this? And then like, nope, there's nothing. It's just all them, you know. It's like, oh, okay. I mean, I guess something gets that dog, who knows what, but it wasn't what I was expecting. I still had a okay time with it, but I thought I was getting something else for sure.
Is it safe to say you felt a little bamboozled? You felt a little duped by the trailer, Ben?
Not on the level of The Witch, but yeah, I definitely felt a little bamboozled, but I still enjoyed it. So yeah,
A24 out here just bamboozling people left and right with their trailers, man. Okay, real quick before we talk about the movie anymore, I did want to just bring up one topic. A24 has done a screening room before. They have a screening room online. That's how we were able to watch Funny Pages last month and cover it here on the pod. They generally do really cool things, especially if you are an all-access A24 member like you and I are. But they did have a horror screening room this past week. I think it was just like yesterday or a couple of days ago, actually. It was $6, 6 horror movies. You have like 6 days or 7 days to watch all of these horror movies, and you get access to all of them. It was Lamb, Saint Maud, Hereditary, Midsommar, Green Room, and The Witch. I just wanted to bring this up. I think it's really cool. I think this is really cool that A24 does this, and I think they should do it with more things. My one call out is like, Lamb's not a horror movie, but you know, we know how we feel about this. Are you a fan of these screening rooms?
Oh, the screening rooms are great. I love it. Like, I don't know if like society is just getting worse since the pandemic, or I'm just getting older, maybe both, but I love a theater experience so much. That's why I love movies, all that kind of stuff. But and just like people are on their phones so much. People like they act like they're at home now in the theater sometimes, and it drives me crazy. It's like, you guys, you're in public right now. Like, shut the fuck up. Like, we're all trying to watch this movie for the first time. You know what I mean? So there are some times where I'm just like, I can't be here. This is so annoying, which is why I think things like the screening room are fantastic. This episode is going to drop on the 28th. So I think this runs through the 31st. So you could still sign up for this right now and have through the end of the month to watch all of these. We have covered all 6 of these movies. So, you know, maybe let's do a little double feature, you know, watch the movie, listen to us talk about it. I think overall we're positive on most of these movies. Obviously I had my feelings on The Witch. We also recently covered Saint Maud. But yeah, and if you haven't seen Green Room, please watch it, because I need everyone to love it, including you, Jade. Please. You need
Come on,
to love
Jade,
this movie.
get it together.
It's such a good movie. Patrick Stewart's a bad guy. Come on, it's perfect. But yeah, the screening room's great, and I do hope they do more things like this. Like $6 for 6 movies is insane. Like, you can't rent a movie for cheaper than $4, it seems like. So if you get 6 of them, this is perfect. So yeah, I would highly suggest anybody do this.
Yeah, absolutely incredible. And, I mean, generally speaking, Hereditary and Midsommar are among, 10 of the greatest indie horror movies of all time, right? Like you're talking about ones that are pretty revered, which is pretty cool. So yeah, take advantage of that. I think you can just Google like A24 screening room and it should pop up. You should be able to find it. Okay, I'll start with my general thoughts since you shared a little bit about your experience with It Comes at Night. So I had to turn this on while Molly and I were eating dinner because I was going to watch it yesterday. I had to write a paper for school instead. Watched it today, and I was like, this is great. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to jump right into the pod. It's going to be a perfect opportunity. I roped Molly in with like the first act, the first 25, 30 minutes. She got roped in, tried to do some homework on the couch, and she ended up closing her laptop and was glued to the rest of the movie. So,
love it.
Bonus point, Molly was interested, which I feel like is a big win for a movie, for sure. She's not really into movies like that. But I felt like this movie was a little bit more meandering and a little bit more of a roller coaster than I had anticipated. I think there were really a lot of like ebbs and flows with the pacing. Considering we start out with such like an abrasive kind of, set of scenes and a setting that we get, and really kind of being freaked out initially. I felt like we took a couple dips of like where I was like, okay, what are we doing? Like, what's going down? What's the goal? What are we learning here? What are we setting up? And then, It Comes at Night obviously refers to, grief and fear and all of these inward facing things. But I do think the movie has a couple of issues when it tackles what we saw. My biggest question, what happened with the dog, dude? Something got the dog. That is a fact. What was it? What could it be? Like, do you have any idea? I think that's my biggest question mark is like, when you have a movie in this setting, I need to know. I need to know more. I just need to know a little bit of background. Like, how are people getting sick? Like, how many people are left? We get mentions of like the city, but there's just like not quite enough details. And then like the dog is dragged in with blood dripping everywhere.
Yeah.
That was my biggest question to you is like, what do you think got the dog?
That's what I really don't know. And I was expecting more of that kind of stuff. It's like, okay, cool. The dog just got attacked or like it was responding to something that it was running towards, and then, as it comes back and you're just seeing its guts and stuff like that. Like, okay, whatever this is possibly tied to whatever is causing this infection is out there, but we never get to see what it is. And so that's again, like where I felt like the little bait and switch here is like, oh, okay, this isn't like, I think like most people thought that it was like a monster or whatever. Like that's what comes at night. That's why you don't go outside at night. Cause that's when they are roaming, like they're nocturnal monsters. So we can go out during the day, kind of like a quiet place, but instead of, noise, it's just like daylight or something, whatever. That's what I thought we were getting. But you're right. Then it becomes it's more about the grief. I mean, our protagonist ends up being the son. Like you think it's Joel Edgerton.
Yep.
But everything is seen essentially through the focus of the son here, who's played by Kelvin Harrison Jr., who does a great job. I didn't know what else I had seen him in, but I pulled up his IMDb. He was in, he played BB King in the recent Elvis movie, which I love.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, he's going to be, I believe, in the Lion King remake with Barry Jenkins, the Mufasa, or not remake, but sequel. Yep. He's going to be in that. He was in Trials of Chicago 7. And also he was in Waves, which is a movie that we have not talked about yet, but it was directed by the same guy, Trey Edward Schultz. So I feel like we have to hit Waves pretty soon here because I mean, these two, it seems like it's a great duo. So Kelvin Harrison Jr. was great. The rest of the cast is honestly also awesome. We're both, I think, here for Riley Keough at all times.
Always.
Like, whatever the movie is, if Riley Keough's in it, I'm there. Joel Edgerton, obviously, Christopher Abbott, and Carmen Ejogo, I believe is how you say her last name. So all of them doing wonderful work here. But I don't know. They really create like a very, I don't know. I love a movie that gives you the sense of the place, and we know exactly where we're at. This house is very intimate, and we get to know pretty much every single nook and cranny of this house where, the kid goes to like listen, where Travis goes to listen to people talking and stuff like that. But everything is really kind of seen through his lens. We get his like dreams, and like the camera even switches to like a different aspect ratio, like when we're in his dream sequences, which is kind of cool. But that's what's like, is he the one that was like walking at night? We thought it was the little boy, but maybe it's him. There's a lot that's brought up that's really kind of interesting to think about. But I liked it. Like I said, I didn't get what I thought I was getting, but I still enjoyed what this movie was.
Yeah, I agree with you there. I think it definitely threw me for a loop initially when I was like, oh, Travis this is what he is saying. Like, this is what is concerning him. I initially thought it might have been possible that like he was some, I don't know, like paranormal in some aspect. Like he could see the future or like see what is going to happen, because he initially comes into contact with Will, this guy that they find, and he has a dream or a nightmare of like meeting him while he's tied to the tree, and like sees that his eyes are black. And I was like, oh, so like maybe he can tell like people are going to get sick or something like that. So I think most of my questions come from like the Travis like seeing things and experiencing things aspect, but I do understand that it goes hand in hand with like it comes at night. Like it is the fear and the treachery and the darkness that Travis experiences. Like that is what is coming for him. And it isn't necessarily like this monster. Let's get into true cinema so we can break this down. We can talk about the final 10 minutes a little bit more, because I feel like this has a pretty solid like A24 final 15 here.
For sure.
Definitely caught me a little off guard. I want to start with the opening scene. Huge like stage setter of the grandpa being sick, having this illness, and taking him out, to the forest and shooting him and burning him, and it's kind of wild, honestly.
He's got a
like
system.
It's like they've definitely done this before. Yeah. And, and they have that room, they have that kind of like quarantine room in which the grandpa is. So this is not the first rodeo. I thought it was a very effective and impactful opening few minutes to really set in that fear of like, oh my God, okay, like they do not fuck around when it comes to this disease.
Yeah, it lets us know within the first 5 minutes that nobody is off limits from dying in this movie.
Yeah.
It's like the dude is willing to shoot his father-in-law in the head. You know what I mean? Like if you're sick, you're done for, so it's like, okay, cool. This is not a disease to be messed with. These people are not to be messed with. Like he's got a system for sure. I thought that was like very effective. I just open up with them saying goodbye to him. It's like, holy cow, this is kind of crazy. And then I think it's like a little bit after that, the first night of sleep where we get the first dream with Travis, and we get this, the grandpa, kind of with the black whatever coming out of his mouth. And that's like, honestly, like kind of the only real jump scare we get throughout it. There's like a couple of them, but that's the first one. And that's what I thought we were getting, was more of like this really just, I don't know, just this scary stuff, this whatever's coming out of our mouth. We get it a little bit with Riley Keough later, but not like in the same kind of suspense, like in your face kind of way. But a super effective opening, and just lets you know like anybody could go. They're not afraid to kill anybody. So yeah, let's do this. Yeah.
And it, and that theme, mission accomplished when you get to the end, right? People die. Like basically everybody dies. And they're not afraid to do what needs to be done in order to try to reclaim their safety and have their safety. Let me ask you this then. So is this movie, in your eyes, is this a horror movie, or is this more of a thriller? Is it more of a mystery? What do you think? Like, what is the genre that this ultimately falls under?
Probably thriller, I think, overall, with like a horror sheen on it, I guess. I don't know. Like this is
horror veil.
Yeah, exactly. Like it's kind of shown that way. I mean, I brought it up earlier, but it's kind of feels reminiscent of A Quiet Place, where it is like kind of this apocalyptic thing happening. But in that one, we do get the jump scares. There are monsters. Like there is that side of stuff. And we don't really get a lot of that here. So that's where, for me, it just becomes less of a horror movie and more of like a suspense thriller mystery kind of thing. So I get why it's like labeled this way. And I think it's what they want people to think it is. But for me, I'd probably, in retrospect, call it more of a thriller.
Yeah. I think like initially I might have been like 15 or 20 minutes in, and I was like, this is a thriller. This is not a horror for me. This is definitely like a high suspense, slow burn thriller of like, what are we going to do? What is our moral obligation to other human beings that are trying to survive, right? And I think by the time we get to the end, I think at least the really dark and like maybe not demented, but like the darker side of like the moral of the story is like humanity's kindness killed them. Like this guy was so hopeful and was looking on the positive side of things. That got them killed. Ultimately, they had a really fucking good setup, and he blew it because of this dude that came in looking for supplies, and he ended up helping him out. Next on the list, interrogation on the tree. We get Paul, who is played by Joel Edgerton. We get Will, the guy who is part of this family, and he comes looking for supplies, and Paul just takes him out. Ultimately, knocks him clean out for like hours and hours and hours. He had to be out for a long time because they tied him to the tree. They went back like the next morning. He was still unconscious. And we get this really intimate kind of interrogation of like, what are you doing? Don't lie to me or I'll murder you right now here on the spot. My big question to you in this scene, and I think this scene is really pivotal for the direction that these characters end up eventually taking.
Yeah.
Did you personally, did you believe Will's story? Did you believe that he had a kid, he had a wife, they live 50 miles away, they're just trying to look for water and supplies? Like, were you buying that when he initially told this story?
Yeah, I was 100% like on
Hook,
board
line,
with
and
it.
sinker.
Yeah, I was there for it. I'm like, yeah, that totally makes sense. And I still think that was the case. Like, I think they were healthy when they showed up. I think, whatever happened in the cabin. But yeah, I think the interrogation methods, all that kind of stuff, I feel like they kept him tied to that tree for a day. Like they were like, we got 2 mornings, you know what I mean? But that also brings up, the next day with the interrogation where he like brings out the water and he's like, you can have this, but you have to give me answers. And you get someone in desperate mode like this where they're tied to a tree for a full day. Like yes, they're not going to ideally they're not going to fuck with you. He shows him the gun with all the bullets in it. He just tells him
that was badass
up front. Bro. He's like, listen, man, I'm not faking you out. I have 6 bullets in this gun right now. I also have a jug of water. Like, if you give me honest answers, you can have water. If you don't, you're going to get one of these bullets. Like, it's pretty straightforward. So yeah, I believed it. I still think that was the case. What about you?
No, absolutely not. Guy's
really?
A piece of shit in my opinion,
nice.
because there is a very particular moment for me that I think is done quite well when Paul goes to kind of like untie him on the back end of the tree, right? We get this really like big tracking shot where we see Will kind of like ominously looking down and like off to the side. He's kind of just like staring. And I remember like telling Molly out loud, I was like, that's the look. And she's like, what do you mean? And I was like, that's the look. He is now trying to determine how do I win this guy over? How do I take over his place? How do I either murder him? How do I get my family the best deal in this situation? In my eyes, he obviously wasn't lying about the kid and the wife. They had, 2 goats and chickens and things like this. That was all very true. But in my eyes, from the very beginning, his intentions were every man for himself. His intentions were not to start a community like Paul's wife had maybe thought that could, be the ultimate case.
Oh, yeah.
I think he was very sus, in my opinion.
No, I believe that. I guess I thought you were asking if I thought they were sick at that point or not. Like,
oh no, good question.
I thought that's what you were asking. I thought like he knew his son was sick, and so they were just trying to, for whatever reason. So I don't think they were sick. I think they were all healthy when they got there. I'm totally with you though. Like, he had no intentions of like creating a commune or whatever. It was just, I think he was more straightforward. Like, we will give you some food if you give us water. Like, I almost see it as point blank as that. And then the wife brings up like, what if we all live together? It's like, okay, that could make sense, but then it just becomes like a bad roommate movie after that, where it's like, I don't live with the guy who's got all these rules, this is awful. Get me out of here.
Yeah, dude, that overload. Initially, he's like, yo, this is exactly how my house functioned. He's like, we're going to take your guns. We're going to put them in our safe. You good with that? And they're just like, yeah, sure.
Yeah, that for like, there's a lot of family meetings around that table. And like, we've had those roommates for sure. So I would be
Oh.
out of there too. Like, nah, man, I'm good. Like,
Yeah, absolutely. Very like What We Do in the Shadows situation here with everybody coming to Jesus at the table. Okay, I wanted to put the truck drive on here. This is kind of like the next big scene that we get. I wanted to put it on for a couple reasons. We get this really, I thought it was a very effective scoring of like this kind of thumping and beating.
Yeah.
Really good at creating that tension in that moment. I personally got a big sense of distrust between these two guys, right? They really don't know who each other are yet, and they're trying to figure out where they stand with each other in this kind of like bullfight of masculinity. I really liked the camera work. We get this good shot in the rearview mirror of like Will in the back of the truck, and I feel like that kind of like helps identify that mistrust a little bit, like we're continuously watching our backs and looking back at this. And then we get the ambush. We get this massive, and I will be honest, it was a little bit telegraphed of like, you know, okay, we're in the truck, some shit is gonna go down. For obviously, sure. They're ambushed by what appears to be two strangers, a man and a son, I believe.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? Was this planned? Did Will know of these people? Like, why would they all of a sudden like I don't know. I'm just curious. I don't have a problem with the scene. I think it's actually quite good, but I'm just curious. Like, what were these people thinking?
I just assumed it was two people that were also trying to survive as well. If people are infected, I don't know that like they're in trucks or whatever. So I assume they were trying to, maybe they had supplies. Maybe they saw all the water in the back or whatever. Yeah. So it's just like, let's take these guys out. Cause at that point, it just really seemed survival of the fittest out there, which is also a crazy point that I didn't bring up during the interrogation scene. Joel Edgerton was a fucking teacher. Like he was not like in the army or anything, but he has all these systems dialed in. Like he knows what he's doing. It is crazy, but he was a history teacher. So maybe he just like knows all these tactics, from the past, from wars, from all that kind of, he even talks about like, if you want to know anything about the Roman Empire, I can tell you that. So,
and I was hopeful. I was like, that's the moment. Sick. Like Joel Edgerton, give us a 2-minute TED talk on the Roman Empire, bro.
Let's
like
do
give
this.
It to us.
No, I loved it. I loved it though. Like you said, really built some great tension as they leave. He's like, you're in the back. It's like, okay. And then puts his backpack back there. Then also reaches down and pulls the hammer that was back there. And I was like, oh man, like he really doesn't trust this dude because this guy might grab the hammer and like hit him while he's driving or whatever. So it's like, okay, we know there's still no trust here. And there's not at that point because he's like, I'm going to go see if his family's sick or not. Like, we'll see what happens. So it's totally understandable at that point. But I do think trust comes for a little while. But this was, arguably, for me, maybe one of the most like important and best scenes of the movie.
Yeah. Okay. Travis's first dream. I wanted to bring this up. You mentioned we kind of see things through the lens of Travis. We get this dream. And this is like his initial dream where Riley Keough's character, Kim, like shows up in his room because obviously we get a scene later after this where they're in real life, like sitting at the dinner table in the middle of the night. And there's definitely that sexual tension there of like Travis has not been around another woman that is like not his family, and they're living in the fucking apocalypse. So like dude's probably just dying here at the sight of a woman. But Riley Keough's character shows up in his room, gets on top of him, and then starts dribbling this black substance or blood or whatever it is out of her mouth, like into his mouth. I thought that was definitely like a little horrific, a little on the horror side of things.
Yeah, for sure.
And I like that. The dreams did not always work for me though. I thought they were a little ambiguous some of the time. At least in like what was trying to be portrayed. I had a hard time distinguishing. Like we dream, like did this actually happen? And I want to come back to that question at the end when we talk about the final scene as well.
Yeah. This was a very cool scene. I enjoyed it. Like you said, I was thinking about that while we were watching this. Like we talked last week about the witch and, I was like, I watch these movies. I'm like, man, how are these parents having sex? Like if all these people are in the same house, like the same room,
Same
I
problem,
got thinking
bro.
about this dude, just to give people an insight of where my brain's at while I watch these. So it's like, man, this kid just must like go to town on himself all the time. Like you're the fucking apocalypse. Like
little yank bank right there.
Yeah, that guy has like so many crusty socks under his mattress without a doubt, like so to finally like meet another woman, like I don't think we know exactly how long this thing has been going on, but like to meet someone and it's just like, yeah, like she's married and all that kind of stuff. But for him, it's possibly the only woman he's seen in years, so it's an interesting tension to bring into the house. And I think we kind of feel it from her a little bit too, because in theory, she's been just with these, her son and husband the whole time, or I don't know if they're married or not or whatever partners, but that dinner table scene where they're talking late at night it brings a lot of cool tension in there that I think it's effective for sure.
Yeah. Speaking of the dinner table scene, I don't have it here on the True Cinema, but I want to ask you, cookie, cupcake, or ice cream guy? What do you prefer out of all three?
Ice cream all day, without a doubt.
Any specific flavor here? You got a favorite, or are you just taking whatever's given to you?
I mean, Desert Island, I'm taking mint chip. Like, that's my jam.
Yeah, Ben, I knew we hosted podcasts together for a reason, brother. This is money right here.
That's my go-to, without a doubt. Like, I'm open for stuff, but yeah, if you're giving me one choice, I'm going with that. What about you? Same?
Yeah. No, absolutely the same. Look, if it's not mint chocolate chip, it's regular chocolate chip, and it's always got to have a chocolate chip in it. But yeah, it's ice cream every day of the week and twice on Sundays. No question about it.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got two more here on the short list. Stanley, the dog, running into the woods. This is really kind of like the second act finale, or like the introduction to this third act kind of pacing that we get, where the dog runs off into the woods. Travis follows him. Paul is just like bitching at his kid and is just like, you don't go into the woods by yourself. And then we get a really good kind of animosity between Paul and Will of like Will wanting to follow Stanley and like see what is in the woods. Paul's like, no, we're going home. Like, everybody pack it in. We're going back. Obviously, there's something out there. And it looks like Travis sees it. It looks like Travis has a look on his face of like, he witnesses some type of monster or something.
Yeah.
I don't know, but I thought it was a good scene.
Because I think the next time we see Travis, he's like sketching, right? And that's when we see him drawing the things like in the forest, right?
Here's the thing about the sketching. And I said this when I watched it. I said, look, if you're living in the apocalypse, or you're living in this virus world, and you're one of the final families, and your only child is sketching a picture in which he sees dead things in the forest, you should be a little fucking concerned. You should be a little curious about what is going on. Joel Edgerton's character is just like, well, look for your dog in the morning, buddy. Have a good night. And it's like, do you not see what he is drawing right there?
Yeah, he's not paying attention at all. Yeah, super effective scene again. We get to see Will, like, I mean, just seeing, what's his name? Is it Trevor? What's his name? I forget the son's name.
Travis.
Travis. Yeah, him like running off after the dog, and then Will after him, and then Paul. Like, it's, just this effect of all of them, this like chain reaction, going after the dog and then going after the people that are going after the dog. It was so interesting how connected he became to that dog, because he just like set aside any concern of what he was running towards. He's like, I don't care, I'm going to go follow him. So super effective scene. But then as it wraps up and Paul's like, we're going now, to Will. It's like, oh, you're kind of like running the show here, and I don't know how well, he's taking this. So that definitely, like you said, sends us into this third act here.
Yeah. And then I kind of have a catch-all True Cinema moment here for kind of really the final 15 minutes that we get. Stanley shows up, the dog shows up in kind of the quarantine room, and is definitely sick or dead or dying or has been attacked by something. We find out that potentially Andrew is sick. I want to table that because I have a question, but that is what is told to us. Andrew is sick. Travis escorts him to the bedroom, and then we essentially come down to the wire of this big battle of like these two families kind of going at it, duking it out, holding each other at gunpoint, punching the shit out of each other, shooting each other in the woods. And Paul just shoots a kid, shoots a woman, just takes people down.
Come on, Will. Get up now! Don't fuck around, Will. Get on your feet now, come on!
And then the final, few minutes is like this in and out sensation we get from Travis's perspective of him being sick and ultimately dying. And then we get this very haunting final frame. I feel like, again, like A24 has perfected them, finding movies that have very haunting final frames. We get the two characters, the husband and the wife, looking at each other, and they're deathly ill, and they have ruined the safety that they had. I was definitely invested in this final 15, but it did not go the way that I thought it was going to go.
Yeah, I didn't expect us to like essentially lose everybody that we've been following the whole movie, which kind of feels like that's how it got left off there. So yeah, like in your mind, I was trying to figure this out. Like, does Andrew, it's like the young boy that comes with Riley Keough and Christopher Abbott, did he like pet Stanley and get sick, and then Travis finds him and then sends him in with the parents? Like, is that the chain reaction here? Because we see Andrew first, but then later on we see that the door's been open. So in my mind, it's like, oh, I think maybe Andrew had saw the dog, and then this is why this has all happened. Because he asked him like, oh, does he sleepwalk? And both parents are like, no, he doesn't do that. So I don't know. That's kind of how I perceived it all happening. What was your thoughts? Is that kind of the chain reaction, or what did you think?
Yeah, so I think, and one of the final moments that we get is, I think, the reality of Travis actually going into the room, because there was a very important moment of them asking him, like, did you go into the room? Like, did you go and see the dog? And he adamantly denies it and says no. And then we get a scene in which he actually does. I chose to believe that scene. And so in my eyes, he actually did go in the room because he couldn't help himself from, seeing his dog. He went into the room. Travis, got sick. And on the way back, saw Andrew, took him into his parents' room and transferred the sickness to Andrew. But I think Andrew showed symptoms first because he was younger, because he was more susceptible to it. Travis held out for a little bit longer. So I think the belief is like Andrew got sick, but I think actually Travis caused the downfall of this family. And Travis and Andrew just displayed symptoms a little bit quicker. At least that's what I thought. So
yeah, I mean that makes sense. I guess I assume Travis going in, which is part of his dream sequence again, but I can totally see that being the case.
I don't know.
I think it's left ambiguous on purpose. You know what I mean? Like we don't know exactly. So either way, yeah, it leads to a great like dinner table chat, where they're just like pointing fingers, and then it's like, okay, let's take time away from each other, and then it becomes this like Mexican standoff, where everyone's like pointing guns at everybody.
Yeah.
And then like you said, like they start to leave, and then they're running away, and he accidentally shoots the kid. But then, the mom is sitting there freaking out. But we saw, like we talked about at the beginning of this movie, he shoots his father-in-law. Like no one's off limits. So like,
he doesn't give a shit.
Riley Keough's out of here. It's like, yeah, listen, I'm sorry I killed your kid, but you've got to go now too. So that's just kind of it. So it leads to, a great ending here. That haunting final scene, like you said, with the two of them looking across from each other at the table.
It was good.
Both looking kind of sick, to be honest. Like they're both not looking great at that point. Yeah. So yeah, it's just like all in retrospect, like, oh yeah, maybe you just should have killed this guy once he showed up, and you guys would still be okay. But
right. Yeah, exactly. Okay, so here is my question before we actually choose our true cinema moment here. When this initially kicked off, and when we get kind of Will holding Paul at gunpoint in that stairway, right? And then we've got Paul's wife. I can't remember her name.
Sarah.
Sarah, yes, we've got Sarah holding a rifle against Will from another hallway, and Kim screaming downstairs. So we've got this kind of like three-way battle.
Yeah.
I remember at that moment thinking, what a pretty bitchin' way to end this movie would be? Is that when Paul is counting to 3, he goes, okay, we're going to make a deal. On the count of 3, we're both going to drop our guns. He was like, 1, 2, and I was like, I paused it. I told this to Molly, and I was like, listen, if he says 3 and the screen goes black and we hear a gunshot, I think that's a fucking awesome way to end this movie, because we don't know who shoots who. We don't know if anybody survives, and we don't know anything beyond that. We just know that people's paranoia ended up getting to them. We don't officially know that anybody was actually sick. And, I feel like that would be very in line with like the ambiguous ending. Like, what happened? I don't know. Maybe, obviously, that doesn't answer a lot of questions that people might have. But did you like the fact that like they ended up getting sick? Did you enjoy that? Because for me, I just wanted to know more. I just wanted to know more about the sickness. Like, how did it start? Where did we get it from? Why are the symptoms so quick? Like, I just wanted more detail. So I was a little less attached to like, oh no, they got really sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah, totally. Honestly, my takeaway from that is, Molly, you have the patience of a saint, because I could not, like, if we were watching this movie and we got to this scene and you paused it on me, I'd be like, dude, what are you doing? Like,
turn the movie on.
So Molly, all credit to you. You are a saint for putting. I mean, your patience here is amazing. I think that would have been a really cool ending, though. Honestly, like if they went out like Reservoir Dogs style and just like everyone shoots everyone and we're done, you know?
Yeah.
Just leave Andrew and Travis or whatever just to like be left over. Yeah, it was kind of a bummer ending though, like for sure. It's just like it was bleak, but I think that's obviously like kind of the intent, you know, of it. So I'm not always opposed to it. I don't need like a happy ending all the time, but I would just, again, I think throughout the whole movie, I just realized it was subverting my expectations. So I guess I shouldn't have been surprised that it just like ended on kind of a bummer note, you know?
Yeah, totally. Okay, before we started recording, you said you're keeping your picks close to the chest.
I am indeed.
What are you picking for True Cinema? Because I'm copying you this week. I'm also not picking something on the list. And I'm curious if we're going to pick the same thing.
So I'm keeping my A1s to my chest, but actually on True Cinema, the truck drive scene is probably
nice.
That whole sequence is probably my favorite thing in here, from the beginning of them walking to the truck. He's like, "You're in the back," all that kind of stuff, all the way up through like the shootout and stuff. That was the peak for me.
Okay, yeah, I can respect that. I like that pick a lot. I am gonna choose a conversation between Paul and Will. They share some of their, of Grandpa's hard alcohol that is obviously gold that is hard to come by. And there's a moment in their conversation when Paul asks him like about his family or something to this effect. And Will replies and says like, oh, I was an only child. And Paul's like, well, I thought you told me that you had a brother, which I thought was a great callback initially to the very first like moment of distrust of like, now we're hearkening back. We find ourselves in the same situation again. And then Will responds, it's like, well, it was a brother-in-law. It was like a brother, blah, blah, blah. Yeah. And immediately after that, Paul basically like is silent for like 15 seconds and is like, you know what? I'm going to head to bed. I'm going to get out of here. Yeah, and I remember being like, that's it. That's the moment. Like, he fucked it. Like, so was he telling the truth, Ben? I don't know. I think that is something this movie actually does really, really well, is this like ambiguous distrust. Like, I don't really know people's true intentions. I thought it was good.
It was great. And then now I'm honestly just picturing you pausing it and yelling at Molly, like, that's it. That's the moment. That's it right there.
This is it. Look, we're here.
Molly, this is it. Pay attention.
I'm just Leo. I'm just like pointing to the screen. I'm like, this is the moment. Just so right you know, this is it right here. Okay, let's do our A1 Acts. We've got Joel Edgerton. Obviously, we have not talked about on this pod before, I believe. So we've got Star Wars Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. He does make a cameo in the Kenobi television show, I believe, as well. Smokin' Aces, Warrior, The Thing, Zero Dark 30, Great Gatsby, The Gift, Black Mass, Loving, It Comes at Night, Red Sparrow, and The Green Knight. What does he do in Zero Dark 30? I haven't seen that movie for a minute, but that movie
it's been a while. Flat. I assume he's just one of the soldiers. I don't remember though exactly.
He's just a foot soldier, just a man.
It's been a minute, yeah.
Okay, what's your pick?
My pick is one of my favorite movies of all time that is not on this list. You've come on the other pod I do, 3 Films in a Podcast, and we do a round called Unsung Gems on movies that we love that we think people don't know enough about. And this was one of the first ones I picked. It's called Animal Kingdom. They actually made a TV show about this, I believe, on TNT, which I have not watched yet. But it's about an Australian crime family, kind of based on a true story. And Joel Edgerton is in it. Guy Pearce is in it. Jackie Weaver, and our boy Ben Mendelsohn is in it. And he is fucking fantastic in it. So it's honestly it's a great movie, but essentially this 17-year-old has to go live with his grandma, who's played by Jackie Weaver, but she's kind of the head of this like crime family. And so he's like thrown into the midst of this stuff, unintentionally or unexpectedly. So it's how he deals with that, being surrounded by this criminal family, even though that's not really his thing, and how he gets wrapped up into it. It is such a good film. I love it so much. Honestly, I'd recommend it to anybody. So Animal Kingdom is going to get my Joel Edgerton pick.
Okay. Yeah, that's hard to beat, man. That's pretty good reasoning there. I'm going through Joel Edgerton's IMDb real quick to see if there's anything on here that I skipped. I do want to mention he is in the next Paul Schrader film called Master Gardener.
Okay.
Just wanted to put that out there. Definitely, we love Paul Schrader on this pod. First Reformed is a masterpiece. So looking forward to that. I am probably and so you were right about Zero Dark 30. It says Patrick Squadron Team Leader. So at least he was a team leader. So
Team leader.
He had that going for him, which is good. Dude, honestly, I'm gonna go with Zero Dark 30 because that movie is dynamite. If you have not seen Zero Dark 30, you are missing out. Not only directed by Catherine Bigelow, which is like one of the greatest female filmmakers maybe ever. Like, she hasn't made anything recently, but she has made some absolute heaters.
Point Break, man.
Exactly. And that movie is just it's very discomforting. It's very visceral. So be prepared. And it deals with war. So you see a lot of stuff. But that movie is sick. I like that movie a lot. Okay. Movies with it in the title. Obviously, this is called It Comes at Night. And I do think it is worth mentioning. I do love a title that says it because it's so ominous. Like, well, what does it mean? What is it? And I think it's really effective. So It Comes at Night. We've got It Chapter 2, obviously. It Follows, Set It Up, Just Go With It, It's a Wonderful Life, Some Like It Hot, As Good as It Gets, Wreck-It Ralph. Wow, good pick, Ben. Put that one on the list. That was smart.
Right.
It's a mad world. A river runs through it. What's love got to do with it? And it's complicated. That's everything on the short list. You said you have another secret pick for this one. I tried going through my letterbox. I couldn't fucking find a thing with it in the title that I've seen. Yeah.
Well, my pick comes from a, newly kind of important MCU director, Mr. Peyton Reed. Handled all the Ant-Man movies, coming up Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania.
Let's go,
also
Kang,
directed
baby.
The Breakup, a great movie. But he directed just one of the best 2000s, like teen comedies, whatever, of all time, called Bring It On, with our queen, Kirsten Dunst, and Eliza Dushku and Gabrielle Union, a great cheerleading movie. It is fantastic. I have my partner, Ashley, to thank for that. So, I am 100% picking Bring It On.
That's good, man. That's well done. I haven't seen Bring It On. I feel like I've kind of missed the boat. I feel like it was a time and place situation. Should I watch it though?
What it sounds to me like is you need an Animal Kingdom Bring It On double feature. So,
I do, the double bill.
Yeah, let's do it.
Absolutely agree. Absolutely. Okay, mine is not on the list either, and I'm going to go with a movie that I actually just watched 2 days ago called It Came from Outer Space. It is a 1953 sci-fi movie, literally about an alien that comes from outer space. I thought it was a banging movie for being made in the 1950s. It's got really cool camera work of like how we see how the alien sees things. It's got great subtext on masculinity and fear of the unknown and all of these really important themes and arcs. And I thought it was quite a good movie. So that's the one I've got on my letterbox right now with it in the title, and I'm picking it. But I've got a week now. Maybe I'll come back to this next week after I do a little more deep digging. But I think I'm gonna stand by my pick. I like that movie. I like that movie a lot.
I think it's great. I await your Animal Kingdom Bring It On reviews next week.
Coming up, you bet. Coming up. Okay, A24 ranking, A through F. You came in with the fucking heat last week, Ben.
I did.
And you dished it. You dished down an F24. Hopefully you don't feel as duped, as bamboozled by It Comes at Night. Do you have a ranking?
I do. And I only gave The Witch an F24 because the F-24 doesn't exist. So I just want to make that clear for everybody.
You haven't stopped.
have not stopped. I think I'm gonna give this maybe like a C plus 24.
Solid.
A
Super
little
solid.
above average. I think, yeah, I don't know. Like it's really riding that line there of a B minus 24, but I'm going to stick with a C plus 24 for this. Like it was good. It was, really good. So yeah, that's what I'm going to go with.
Yeah. I fall pretty similar into line with that. I'm going to go with the C minus, a C minus 24 here. And really the minus comes because I think it gets a little loose. I think it meanders a little bit in kind of the going into the second act. We get this big montage of the family really trying to establish this like familial trust. Just didn't work for me. I didn't see that was needed at all. And then the kind of the switching back and forth between what Travis actually sees and what his dreams are. I like the ambiguous nature, but it just didn't work for me all of the time. And I think it leaves a lot of questions unanswered. And obviously I've mentioned I would like more backstory with the actual virus and like the actual sickness. But I think the movie did a lot of things well and definitely tackles that big broad theme of like, wow, humanity is its own worst nightmare, right? It's its own worst enemy. And I think it does that in a really, really good and effective fashion. So I'm going to go with a C minus.
I think it's, we're falling in the C's there. This feels like a real middle of the road. One. Yeah, A24. Still a recommend, but not obviously the first recommend that we'd give. So, I don't know. I had an okay time with this. I'm very excited about November. I mean, unexpectedly, it's kind of become new release November. We got like A24 is just throwing out a lot of stuff. So I'm excited to see some new movies for sure. But I honestly would love to hear people's thoughts on It Comes at Night. I feel like it is a pretty, maybe not as divisive as The Witch by any means, but I'm curious to see what people thought about what they got versus what they thought they were getting with this movie. So yeah, hit us up. Let us know. You can get it at us on Twitter or Instagram. We are at 24 minutes of A24. My name is Ben Lawhorn.
And I am Ethan Simi. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube and watch us on YouTube as well, because we are on YouTube now, which is very exciting. But yeah, I'm Ethan Simi. Spring break forever, bitches.